Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Laurel Lee. Your colleagues from both sides of the aisle have mentioned how it's a highly partisan time right now. So what are we working on to unify the country?
So I think that the ability to work across the aisle really begins with each individual member. In my circumstance, before I came to Congress, I was Florida's Secretary of State. And in that role, I worked every day with local election officials across Florida. And they come from all different kind of communities, big cities, small towns, and of course across the political spectrum. Some were Republicans, some were Democrats, some were independents. And what it really showed me was how much we can accomplish when we have shared objectives. So in our case, we were very concerned about election security, election integrity, and that was true regardless of political background or personal political views. And we had such a strong alliance and we're really able to deliver results for Florida. And so I bring that same perspective to Congress. There are certain things that very clearly aren't going to be just Republican issues or Democrat issues, they're American issues. And wherever we can, we should be working together to accomplish those objectives. It benefits all of our constituents and really the country when we can find ways to work together.
Absolutely. And before we dive into those American issues that you can find yourself working across the aisle on, I do want to take a step back to the beginning here. Your father's a retired two-star general in the United States Air Force, so you grew up in a military family. Is that what drew you to politics?
So I did. I grew up in an Air Force family and moved all over the country as a child. I came to Florida for school. I went to the University of Florida for undergraduate and law school, and then stayed. Florida was home to me ever since. And so certainly in my family, in my house, there was a commitment to service to our community, to our country. My father's a retired two-star. My mother was a public school teacher. So in both cases, they really did devote their lives to public service. And much of my career in law was also in the public sector. I was a federal public defender, federal prosecutor, later a judge, and have always been drawn to serving the community, serving the public, serving our country in the place that is right, given the professional opportunities and experience that I bring to bear.
And then most recently, before you were elected to Congress, you served in Governor Ron DeSantis' administration as the Secretary of State. Can you describe that experience for us?
Being Secretary of State and being part of Governor DeSantis's administration was really just an extraordinary professional opportunity. So the Secretary of State position itself is just an incredibly diverse role. The Secretary of State in Florida works on everything from elections as the state's chief elections official to serving as the state's chief cultural officer, chief protocol officer. We have the Division of Historical Resources. So there's an incredibly diverse set of things that the Secretary of State is responsible for overseeing in Florida. So I thoroughly enjoyed getting to work in each of those different sectors of the responsibility. And of course, being part of the DeSantis administration was also an incredible experience for me. He has been such a successful and important leader for our state on so many policy issues. And so having the opportunity to really serve from the beginning of his administration and to be part of some of those really important things that we did for Florida, everything from helping our economy continue to grow and thrive to being sure that we were investing in our schools and in our school children and in parents. These are things, community safety, things that are key priorities of mine. And we were able to have some real success stories at the state level.
It sounds like what you're saying from your praise of Governor DeSantis, your ideologies really align. Before we get into your experience in the 118th Congress, I do want to talk about Governor DeSantis for one moment. He's widely seen as a probable and top contender of the 2024 GOP presidential nomination race, even though he didn't announce. If he does announce, do you support him for president?
Well, here's what I'll say. Governor DeSantis is an incredibly talented leader. And whether he chooses to stay as our governor or whether he chooses to run for president, I am very confident that he will serve our country, our state, with incredible integrity and skill, regardless of where he decides to devote his next steps. And I look very much forward to seeing what he achieves.
Well, now let's fast forward to the 118th Congress, where you are a freshman member. It's been about 2 months, but let's take it from the beginning. About 2 months ago, it started off on what many describe as a chaotic moment for the GOP when the House Speaker vote took about 15 rounds, which many said that seemed like a fractured moment for the GOP. You're sitting here now 2 months later. How would you describe the current state of the Republican Party?
See, I would say the opposite. I think what we saw at the beginning of this Congress was a remarkable opportunity for all of the Republicans in the conference, no matter where they came from, no matter how distinct their districts might be within the Republican conference. It was an opportunity for us all to be heard and for us all to work together to get to the right answer and to get to the right solution. And that's what happened. So it was certainly a historic way for us to begin, but we absolutely got to the right outcome. And I think what we demonstrated is that we do have the ability to come together and to work together. So my belief is that that's going to be the first of many such opportunities for us to build coalitions across the Republican conference.
On that note of working together, as you know, it is a divided government right now. Democrats have control of the Senate and Republicans have control of the House. So on that note, what do you think a divided Congress can achieve?
Oh, I think there's a lot that we can achieve. And we really started quite from the beginning in looking at things that are important across the aisle. You know, everything from looking at our Strategic Petroleum Reserve to the Special Committee on China. You know, there are important things we can be doing about which Republicans and Democrats can often agree. Another very important role we have that we've started, right from the outset, have been engaged in quite a bit of oversight. And there are important questions out there. I have the privilege of serving on three committees: Judiciary, Homeland Security, and House Administration. And in each of those committees, we've also been engaging in important oversight of government agencies and the issues that are facing our country. So there is a lot. One of our commitments to America as Republicans was a government that's transparent and accountable. And one thing that we're working on every single week is making sure that we're getting the American people the information and the answers that they want, and that the government is accountable for the choices that it's making.
Can you specifically dive a little deeper on there? How exactly is the Republican Party being transparent and accountable?
Sure. So, you can really go committee by committee and see what it is that we're looking at. I know that one thing that was very important in my community, in my district, is the concept of community safety. And I think that presents itself in a number of different ways. Again, as a former prosecutor and judge, it's an area that I know a lot about in my community. And I know that it's a real priority for our residents. And so in both the Judiciary Committee and in Homeland Security, we've been focused on the concept of border security. Just this last week, the Homeland Security Committee did a field hearing down on the southern border, and we heard from local sheriffs, ranchers, landowners, the people who are actually living every day the experience of what it is when our border is not secure. And, their stories are so important because this isn't just a question of policy on a page or a statistic. These are real people whose lives are being affected and irreparably changed because of a lack of a secure southern border. So, that's just one example of the type of thing that we have an incredible opportunity to do in Congress. So, I think that anyone who was down there, had the Democrats on our committee come with us, they would have seen the same thing and heard the same testimony. And you simply cannot avoid the conclusion that this is an absolute travesty, what's happening down there. It's not just people, they're drugs, human trafficking, that's very dangerous and very destructive to our country that's flowing across that border every day. So that's one of the things that I am very committed to working on in this Congress, is doing everything that we can to be sure that we're keeping that border secure.
Sure, you were actually on the southern border, and I do want to talk about other testimony that happened earlier this this month. Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz said earlier this month that part of the U.S. Mexico border are a, quote, crisis situation, and that DHS does not have, quote, operational control of our entire border. Just earlier this week, I talked to one of your Democratic colleagues, Representative Greg Casar, who is a representative from Texas, and he said that there is a humanitarian crisis on the border. So Democrats are saying this. You said this. I think almost every Republican, if not every Republican in the House, says that there's a crisis on the border. So both parties agree that there is a problem that needs to be solved here. So how specifically will you work across the aisle to solve this problem?
So I think there are a couple of different things of approaches that we need to take. One has to do with the actual security, the physical security at the southern border. How can we stop the flow of individuals who are coming here illegally? Because fundamentally, here's why that's important. The drug cartels in Mexico are controlling who's getting across. These people who are coming across are in many cases being exploited. They're being charged exorbitant sums of money. Some of them are being sold into human trafficking situations. And we know that they're bringing alarming quantities of fentanyl across our border that's killing Americans every single day. So step one is looking at how we can secure that southern border. You mentioned Chief Ortiz earlier, and he provided some very important testimony to us that gave us a lot of insight about some of the practical things that would help. And for one thing, he said it would help to have a wall in places that are high traffic areas of the southern border, that having that actual physical barrier would be one step toward helping Border Patrol agents do their jobs and do it safely. There's also some other technology around that. Lighting, roads, other infrastructure that help them patrol and secure, in the very literal sense, our border. Another thing that needs to happen is to really look at what are our laws and are they being enforced? In so many cases, from the southern border to the criminal justice system, if what we would do is actually take a look at what are our laws on the books and make sure that they're being enforced and applied evenly across the board, it would go a long way to making sure that we have a legal immigration process that makes sense, that is fair, that is equally considering people who are eligible to go through that process. And that's ultimately where we want to be.
And you did mention fentanyl coming across the southern border, and DHS just announced a new multi-agency operation that launched this month, which boasts hundreds of U.S. agents to fight fentanyl smuggling across the border. The project's called Operation Blue Lotus, and DHS said it has led to 18 arrests and the seizure of more than 900 pounds of fentanyl in its first week. Is this an operation that you support?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's vital that we support the men and women of law enforcement in this fight against the drug cartels, in particular, the trafficking of fentanyl. It is absolutely stunning the extent to which fentanyl is coming into our country, killing Americans every day. At this point, every community is a border community. There's not a community in America that isn't being affected by the trafficking of fentanyl. And DEA and the agents of DEA are on the front line of the fight against the drug cartel. And in this case, we heard testimony in the Judiciary Committee that they perceived this as a narco-terrorist organization. This is not a simple individual engaged in drug trafficking. It's a very organized, insidious operation. And we need a whole of government response to ensure that we are responding to these cartels and that we're winning. So the men and women of DEA often come in to local communities and serve as federal partners and also a support and a backstop for communities that are confronting this problem. When we were down at the southern border and we heard from local law enforcement officers and sheriffs, one of the things they pointed out is that they do not have the operational resources to deal with this surge in criminal activities. That as they've seen this spike in criminal conduct, drug smuggling, other crimes going on in their communities as a consequence of the insecurity secure border, that they simply don't have the resources coming in to deal with it alone. So we need to be there to help them, the DEA, the Border Patrol agents, to try to help them bridge that gap so that they can keep their communities safe. And it's not just affecting law enforcement. These are problems we heard expressed with respect to medical care and hospital systems, ambulances, really any of those social services in a small community. They're simply not equipped and funded at a base level to be ready to meet a sudden surge in criminal conduct.
Do you think we're on track when it comes to border security, or are we just so far off? We have a lot of work to do? Because DHS Secretary Mayorkas said that his department has seized more fentanyl over the past 2 years than during the previous 5. So are we at least on the right track?
We are not currently. At this moment, I would tell you that I believe the Biden administration's policies at the border have been an unmitigated disaster. We heard from Chief Ortiz that as we have this conversation today, our border is not secure, and there are multiple sectors where we lack operational control. And what that means, if the United States lacks operational control over its border, it means the drug cartels have operational control over those segments of our southern border. So it is a very grave situation right now. But I will say Republicans in Congress are very committed to taking swift and strong action to do everything we can to secure the border. So you will see legislation coming out of the Homeland Security Committee that is designed specifically to deal with trying to shore up our border and add to security. It will be responsive to many of the concerns that were identified by Chief Ortiz and the other witnesses that we heard testifying, who have given us that frontline perspective and experience about what they're actually seeing down there and what they need, the tools that they need, and the things that will help them do their jobs effectively, safely for the men and women who are out there protecting us every day, and keep their communities safe as well.
Sure, and you mentioned some swift action. I would love any insight that you can provide, maybe a preview of that legislation coming from the Homeland Security Committee.
Well, I can tell you we're working hard on it right now. Internal to the committee, we're spending a lot of time to try to put together legislation to make sure we're doing it right, that it's going to include provisions that will address the concerns that have been raised to us. Very clearly, one of the things that we heard was things that we can do and address down at the southern border to help Border Patrol agents do their job, the types of structures, equipment, technology, and things that we can do to help in that regard. Another thing that I think will be important that we'll be looking at is the concept of recruiting, retention, making sure that we have enough agents, that vacancies are getting filled, that we have enough men and women out there to do these jobs, and that we're giving them the equipment and the resources that they need to do them safely.
And as of right now, do you have any Democratic support for this legislation that's in the works?
That's something that we'll be working on as we go forward. I'm certainly hopeful that we will have bipartisan support for many of these concepts. Certainly at the most conceptual level, we're a nation of laws, and I certainly would hope that my colleagues across the aisle would join with us in recognizing the need to stop the fentanyl, to stop the human trafficking, to secure that border and get us back to a place where we're enforcing and following our laws. So we don't yet know, but I am certainly optimistic that we'll be able to get some support from across the aisle.
I do want to touch on some more top policy agenda items that you have. Your House bio says that as a member of Congress, you, quote, will encourage job growth, limit government overreach, secure our borders, which we discussed, and bolster our economic and national security. This is a long list of goals, so I know we really went into detail there on the immigration front, but what else do you think you can accomplish?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of other things that are really important to me that I'm getting to work on. And one is cybersecurity. Also in the Homeland Security Committee, I serve on the subcommittee that addresses cybersecurity. And yesterday we had a hearing with CISA, the subcomponent of Homeland Security that works specifically on cybersecurity within the United States critical infrastructure sectors. And so I think that there's a lot that we can do there to be sure that we are working with and engaging and supporting CISA and our other federal law enforcement partners, because cybersecurity, securing our cyber border, is absolutely going to be a vital part of future national defense. So that's something that I'm very much looking forward to being part of. And I also have the opportunity to chair the elections subcommittee within House administration. And that's something, as a former Secretary of State, getting to work on elections is something that I'm also very passionate about. And I think that we have an opportunity as Congress to really shine a light on states that are getting elections right, states that have had smooth elections and elections with a high degree of transparency, reliability, timeliness, and then also see where there might be places that could use some support. And so we have already gotten to work on that. We've had 2 subcommittee hearings already. One that related specifically to success stories in 2022 and states that have policies and practices that we might want to see other states emulate. And then yesterday we also had a subcommittee hearing that related to election observers and how election observers are really a vital part of healthy elections and give the public an opportunity to really see and understand a little bit more about how our elections work.
Something that you mentioned, I jotted down because it struck me, was you're interested in securing our cyber border. What exactly does that look like?
Well, that is going to be something that is so important in the future, because cyber is something that touches every sector, every one of our critical infrastructure sectors, our private businesses, hospitals, infrastructure, you name it. We all have to be working together to be prepared to face the threat landscape from a cybersecurity front. So, this is an effort that is going to involve, first off, recognizing that this is a threat vector of the future, that there are those out there who wish to do us harm, whether it is a foreign government actor or whether it is simply a criminal, that this is an area where all of us need to be thinking about security in the same way that we would think about how we protect our homes. Do you have locks on the doors? Do you have lights outside? Do you have a fence? In that way, we all need to be thinking about securing our digital assets as well. So I look forward to being part of looking at how we can do that at government, how we can help state and local governments. Another election success story that we had really nationally was the federal government serving as an assistance to state and local governments in bolstering their cybersecurity posture. So one thing that we can do is be partners and help our state and local partners understand what are the standards they should be using, what are some of the best practices they should be implementing, because this really is something that we've all got to be thinking about and be prepared to meet those threats.
And how soon do you think you would be able to work on that, maybe get some legislation through the door?
Oh, we're already started. And one of the things that we heard yesterday is that there's really a need for us to develop tomorrow's leaders. So information technology and cybersecurity both are areas where we need today's students to be taking up this cause and getting these degrees and developing the expertise. Because across the board, whether we're talking about government or private companies, there is absolutely a need for talented people with these skill sets to come in and get jobs. So, and of course, finding a good job with a reliable trajectory and a good income is so important to young people. So one of the things that's already come through is the need to share with young people what great career opportunities these are. And then, of course, we'll also be working with CISA to make sure, that their going forward plan is as it should be, that they are getting what they need and focusing their resources on the infrastructure sectors that they're responsible for protecting. So that's going to be a great collaborative relationship that I look forward to being part of throughout this Congress.
Well, Congresswoman, once that legislation is introduced, I hope you come back on and talk about it with us. But before I let you go, I would love to do a rapid fire Q&A with you. So I'll give you some quick questions. You give me some quick answers.
I'll do my best.
Great. Okay. So first, What has surprised you the most since being elected to Congress?
How hard it is to find my way around the buildings, just to get from my office to other places, the tunnels in the basement. I find myself lost far more often than I would have expected.
Have you made any new friends or allies in office? And if so, who are they?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness, that is too long a list to even name. I am so blessed to have a freshman class that is full of people who are, not only talented and impressive professionals and people of all different backgrounds and walks of life. They've just been wonderful to work with, so friendly. So we have an extraordinary freshman class, and we really do like spending time together. So that has been one of the greatest things about this experience so far, is just the level of fellowship amongst my fellow new members.
Growing up, what political figure did you look to as the type of lawmaker you aspired to be?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I will say, in Florida, we are so blessed because we have an extraordinary delegation, and we also have an extraordinary set of talented political leaders in our state. So, we're just right off the bat, of course, I've already mentioned how much I enjoyed working with Governor DeSantis. I think he has been a great leader for our state in so many ways. He has seen Florida through time of crisis and took us to a place where we landed with a strong economy, with our freedoms intact, and really took care of Floridians and their families in a way that is very impressive. So, he's been a great political leader for us. We've got two great leaders in the Senate, in Senator Rubio and Senator Scott. They both have been serving our state in multiple capacities for a long time. And then our Florida delegation over in the House. We are so fortunate to have talented leaders from across our state who really do an exceptional job reflecting the diversity of Florida. We're a big state with a lot of different communities and different people, and so that's what our delegation reflects, and really that beautiful diversity of our state.
What's the one sentence advice you would give to your younger self?
My younger self, I would tell my younger self not to think that I had it figured out, because in so many ways, the most rewarding, extraordinary moments in my professional career have been the ones that I did not plan for and didn't expect. So I think I would just tell my younger self, buckle up, it's going to be a great journey.
Describe today's Republican Party in one word.
Inclusive.
Describe today's Democratic Party in one word.
Oh gosh, I couldn't speak for them. I wouldn't want to speculate about how they would want to characterize themselves. I'll tell you this much. My hope is that word will be partners.
Great. Out of those who have announced and any probable contenders, who do you support for the GOP 2024 nomination?
And to that question, I will say this. I feel confident that our next presidential nominee will be from Florida.
Interesting. So is that DeSantis?
We'll find out.
Okay, stay tuned. Describe the future of the Republican Party in one word.
Promising.
Describe the future of the Democratic Party in one word.
I just wouldn't know. Again, I think they need to be really they're charting their own course over there, and I wouldn't want to speculate what the future there is. I mean, to the extent that I think Republicans are really the future of American values and representing American people, I think it looks a little more promising for us.
In one sentence, within the next 2 years, how will this Congress improve the country?
This Congress is going to improve this country by focusing on strengthening our economy, keeping our country free, and holding our government accountable.
And in one sentence, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, I hope to leave it a little better than I found it. I want to work on some good policy, treat people well, do honor to my district, represent the people who sent me here and their voices, and make sure that their voices are heard up here in Washington.
Congresswoman Laurel Lee, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.